Awaken your spirit chosen ones. They are watching you, but they still don't know what you are thinking. That's not paranoia. That's reality. Every day there are people quietly observing, taking notes, tracking patterns, and trying desperately to map your mind like it's an open book. But here's the fact that blows their entire operation apart. Most people's brains are predictable 90% of the time, yet yours doesn't follow the script. And that's exactly why you become a living mystery they can't solve, a glitch in their carefully calculated world. It's almost comical when you think about it. While they're running algorithms in their heads, comparing your habits, your reactions, even your likes and dislikes, they're missing the one thing no observation, no hidden tracking, no surveillance tool can measure: the private wiring of your consciousness. You move according to principles they didn't anticipate. You respond in ways they cannot assign a value to, and you pivot in silence while they're still busy trying to guess which chess piece you are. It's like watching someone try to guess what's going on inside a magician's hat, except the magician already knows all their tricks, and he's smirking just enough that they notice, but not enough to catch it. And here's the kicker. The more they try to explain you, the more you defy their models. They look for weakness, for an entry point, for the tiny crack they can exploit, and find nothing. Nothing stable, nothing measurable. It's maddening, almost cruelly entertaining if you let yourself step back and watch it unfold. The silent confusion you create isn't a mistake. It's a byproduct of your mind working differently, beyond pattern, beyond expectation, beyond easy explanation. This is the reality of being someone who refuses to fit the puzzle that the world insists you belong to. You're unpredictable not by accident, but by design, and that design leaves even the closest observers scratching their heads while trying to maintain their dignity, and while they think they're in control by watching. The truth is, control has already slipped quietly through their fingers, and you didn't even have to lift a finger. Welcome to the world where even the people tracking you in secret can't explain your mind, and why that should both terrify and mesmerize anyone who's ever tried. Number 1. Your thinking pattern breaks prediction models people secretly rely on to control others. Most people's behaviors are like a machine with visible levers. Do this, get that. Their minds are predictable because society, culture, fear, and habit shape them into patterns that are easy to anticipate. People around you, even the ones quietly observing, depend on those patterns to understand, influence, or control. They look for triggers, shortcuts, emotional weaknesses, and predictable reactions, because it makes life easier for them to manipulate or anticipate others. They assume everyone will play by the same rules, respond to the same pressures, and repeat the same mistakes. But then there's you, someone whose thinking refuses to be catalogued or programmed. Your mind doesn't follow the usual cause and effect scripts. You act from reasoning, intuition, principles, or timing that they cannot measure, and that unpredictability throws their entire observation system into chaos. It's not that you're intentionally trying to confuse them, it's just that your mind operates differently. While they're looking for patterns in your behavior, trying to chart a course from your words, expressions, or small actions, they discover over and over again that there's no reliable map. Your responses don't escalate on cue. Your decisions don't fit the usual reward-punishment cycle. Your priorities don't match what they assumed they could exploit. Every move they expect to be standard or mechanical ends up being nuanced, delayed, or simply not what they anticipated. Their mental algorithms fail, their assumptions crumble, and their attempts to predict or control you feel increasingly futile. That disconnect creates an invisible power around you. You become ungraspable, like a thought that refuses to stay in one place long enough for them to pin it down. Their confusion isn't just frustrating, it's revealing. It shows that control only works when minds are predictable, and yours refuses to be catalogued. You're operating outside the systems people rely on to map, manipulate, and manage others. Even in silence, even without trying, your very thought process becomes a force they cannot understand, a live anomaly in a world that prizes predictability. And that is the kind of power no one watching you in secret can ever explain. Number 2, people studying you expected insecurity somewhere and couldn't find a stable entry point. Everyone has a point where they bend, where pressure or fear reveals them. It could be approval, recognition, fear of rejection, greed, or a craving for validation. Most people live their lives exposing at least one of these weak spots openly or subtly. Observers, whether conscious or secret, know this. They look for the invisible door, the crack they can push on, the lever they can pull to predict your next move or influence your behavior. But with you, that door doesn't exist the way they expect. They search, prod, analyze, and measure, and every time they think they've found something, it dissolves. They find moments of caution or thoughtfulness, but nothing consistent enough to exploit. This absence of a stable entry point unsettles them because it violates the rules they rely on. People who track or study others in secret operate under the assumption that everyone has a pressure point, that human behavior can ultimately be predicted, categorized, or bent. When they fail to locate yours, it forces them to confront a truth they didn't anticipate. Some minds are simply not available for easy manipulation. It's not arrogance or defiance. It's the quiet result of alignment, awareness, and consistency. Your stability, your inner principles, and your selective engagement create an invisible armor. The more they try to force the equation, the more evident your independence becomes. They expect cracks, and instead they find walls built from self-knowledge, patience, and precision. Every failed attempt to locate an insecurity makes them more anxious, more uncertain, and increasingly aware that control is slipping through their fingers. The very act of watching you, trying to predict your behavior, becomes an exercise in frustration. They realize that their assumptions about human weakness don't apply to you, and that realization carries its own kind of respect, though they'll rarely admit it openly. Being someone who doesn't present an exploitable point doesn't just protect you, it shifts the dynamic. Those trying to study or control you quietly start doubting themselves, their methods, and even their understanding of human nature. And in that doubt, you hold the upper hand, not by fighting, arguing, or proving yourself, but by simply being consistent, aligned, and unshakable in ways they cannot explain. Number 3. Your reactions arrive slower than most people's expectations of drama. Most people operate in a world built on immediate responses, reflexive emotions, and visible reactions. Anger, excitement, frustration, or fear. These are the levers that others expect to pull, and the signals they rely on to gauge what's happening in your mind. Manipulators, observers, and trackers all count on timing. They watch for quick flashes of emotion, for patterns in impulse, for predictable eruptions they can anticipate or exploit. But your reactions don't follow that script. You process internally first, you observe, you weigh, you move at a rhythm they cannot measure. By the time your response appears, they are already off balance, caught trying to anticipate what comes next, and realizing too late that you were never playing the game they thought they were. This delayed reaction doesn't make you passive or slow. It makes you untouchable. In a world where people are trained to react first and think later, your pause is a power move they cannot recognize in real time. Their models fail because they expect linear behavior, cause, effect, reaction. But you operate in layers, in depth, in silent calculation that is invisible until it manifests. And when it does, it lands in a way that feels deliberate, calm, and entirely unexplainable from their perspective. That unpredictability drives them quietly insane. They try to map your timing, to predict your next move based on prior reactions, but your rhythm is yours alone. What's remarkable is that this is invisible armor. By responding on your own terms, not theirs, you strip power from those who try to control, manipulate, or understand you. They think they are ahead, only to discover that the game is already being played on a board they cannot see. They are forced to adjust constantly, to question their assumptions, and to reckon with a reality where control isn't theirs to hold. Your timing, your choice to react on your own schedule, is a subtle yet devastating force. It makes you unreadable, unexploitable, and ultimately unshakable. And the quiet confidence it creates around you leaves observers not just baffled, but quietly aware that they are encountering someone operating beyond their comprehension, someone whose mind refuses to be rushed, forced, or explained. Number 4. You don't protect your image the way socially strategic people do. Most people live their lives like carefully curated social media profiles. Every word, every gesture, every interaction is measured, edited, and performed to maintain an image that keeps them safe, liked, or respected in the eyes of others. They are constantly monitoring themselves, adjusting their tone, masking emotions, and calculating what will make them appear strong, successful, or acceptable. Observers, trackers, and manipulators rely on these patterns because they make people predictable. They can see the cracks, the overcompensations, the points where ego or fear drives behavior. But you don't play that game. You don't live to be someone else's idea of acceptable, and you don't bend yourself to fit into invisible social hierarchies. Because of this, people who try to read or influence you are thrown off instantly. You don't broadcast weaknesses, but you also don't hide yourself behind layers of social armor that can be exploited. There's no fake persona for them to analyze, no predictable mask to peer behind. When they attempt to map your behavior based on conventional social cues, they fail. They expect a set of strategies: smiles at the right time, humble bragging, defensive postures, scripted responses. You ignore those expectations. You move according to internal logic, personal principles, and what feels true, not what looks safe. This lack of social calculation creates confusion. People tracking you in secret are used to predicting, manipulating, and controlling through image management, and suddenly the rules don't apply. Your authenticity becomes a mirror that reflects their own artificiality back at them, making them uncomfortable without you ever having to lift a finger. They begin to realize that control is less about what they see and more about understanding what they cannot see, and in that realm you operate with quiet dominance. By refusing to protect your image the way others do, you gain freedom they cannot explain. Your mind becomes untraceable because the signals they rely on are absent or meaningless. In a world obsessed with appearances and manipulation, your indifference to image makes you untouchable, unmeasurable, and quietly terrifying to those trying to decode you. Number 5. Your loyalty operates on principles instead of convenience. Most people's loyalty is transactional. They stick around because it's easy, because it benefits them, because the timing is right, or because social pressure tells them they should. That kind of loyalty is visible, measurable, and predictable, which makes it easy for observers, manipulators, or anyone quietly studying someone to anticipate behavior. They know when a person will bend, switch sides, or fold, because there's always a point where convenience outweighs commitment. But your loyalty isn't built that way. It's not dependent on perks, safety nets, or temporary alignment. It's rooted in principles, values that guide your choices even when it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, or inconveniently obvious. That's why you confuse people who think they understand human behavior. They expect loyalty to be fluid, to follow trends, or to be swayed by fear, pressure, or temptation. With you, those expectations fail. You will walk away from what is wrong, stay with what is right, and refuse to compromise your standards for short-term gain or temporary approval. People secretly observing you notice patterns, try to predict where your loyalty might waver, and find nothing. That absence of predictability terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could, because control is rooted in predictability, and your principles make you fundamentally ungovernable in their eyes. Being principle-driven means that even when your loyalty is extended, it carries weight. People notice, often too late, that it isn't shallow or conditional. It doesn't bend for convenience, and it cannot be bought, manipulated, or engineered. That quiet consistency creates a gravitational pull around you, attracting those who align with integrity and repelling those who operate with ulterior motives. Your loyalty becomes a force that can't be quantified. It's invisible, yet undeniable. It doesn't need to be announced or justified. Observers trying to decipher your mind realize that while most people are predictable because of their convenience-driven choices, you are operating on a plane they cannot map. And that plane is more powerful than manipulation because it's anchored in something permanent, something that no observer, no tracker, and no system can ever fully predict or control. Number 6. You notice patterns before people notice intentions behind their own behavior. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to what's happening around them without fully understanding why they act the way they do. Their decisions are guided by unconscious triggers, habits, and social cues that even they can't fully explain. That's what makes them predictable, and what makes them visible to manipulators or observers. But you operate differently. You have a mind that sees beyond the surface, that detects patterns not just in actions, but in the underlying intentions driving them. You notice subtle shifts in energy, contradictions in words and behavior, and hidden motivations before anyone else even recognizes they exist. That makes you a step ahead, not by chance, but by perception. When people are trying to map or control you, this ability flips the script. Observers often assume that if they can understand someone else, they can maintain dominance or influence. But when your awareness picks up the intentions behind their own actions faster than they do, the power dynamic reverses without you ever making a move. They begin to feel a silent vulnerability, a quiet exposure, because the person they thought was being studied is already observing, already calculating, already seeing the hidden layers they don't even admit exist to themselves. That awareness makes you untouchable in ways that are subtle but undeniable. It isn't about being suspicious or paranoid. It's about clarity and precision. You aren't waiting to be manipulated. You're already seeing the strings before anyone knows they're holding them. While others are busy performing, adjusting and masking, your insight renders all their calculations obsolete. This talent reshapes interactions without drama. You move through life informed, deliberate, and unshakable because you operate on knowledge that others are blind to until much later. And that lag, the space between their perception and yours, is where your power quietly exists. People tracking you in secret may think they're the ones with control, but the truth is, their intentions, actions, and strategies are already visible to you in a way that will always keep them off balance and silently aware that you are not just ahead, you're operating on a level they cannot explain. Number 7. You detach quietly instead of collapsing loudly when something is wrong. Most people give themselves away in moments of stress, betrayal, or confrontation. Their emotions erupt, their actions become obvious, and their vulnerability becomes a signal for others to exploit, analyze, or manipulate. Observers, trackers, and even those with ill intentions count on these reactions. They expect a visible fracture, a loud sign of distress, a moment they can pin down and use. But you operate differently. When something threatens your balance, instead of exploding or signaling weakness, you withdraw silently. You detach internally first, process the situation privately, and allow your actions, or your absence, to speak on your own terms. That quiet detachment creates confusion for those who are watching because it doesn't fit into the predictable scripts of human behavior. Your detachment isn't avoidance or cowardice. It's strategic, controlled, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. While others scramble, yell, or perform for attention in moments of pressure, you retreat into clarity. You observe, you assess, and you let the world act out around you while you remain anchored. The people trying to map your behavior in secret start to realize that their usual levers, provocation, pressure, manipulation, don't produce the predictable reaction they rely on. The drama they expected to ignite fizzles, leaving them frustrated and uncertain. This quiet withdrawal is far more powerful than visible confrontation, because it forces the world to adjust to you rather than the other way around. Your silence becomes a statement. Your absence becomes a barrier. People who are used to reading emotion for control now have nothing to read. They are left projecting their own assumptions, often wrongly, while you move forward with intention and precision. In this calm, detached state, you maintain authority over your energy, your mind, and your choices. You are untouchable not because you fight harder or louder than others, but because you refuse to be controlled by expectation, drama, or manipulation. By mastering the art of quiet detachment, you operate on a level that leaves observers off balance, unsettled, and silently aware that you are someone who cannot be rushed, forced, or understood in the ways they thought possible. Number 8. Your independence isn't loud enough to be labeled rebellion, but strong enough to resist pressure. Most people define independence by how loudly someone rejects authority, how visibly they break rules, or how aggressively they assert themselves against expectation. Observers, manipulators, and trackers are used to that kind of defiance. It's measurable, predictable, and, ironically, easy to analyze. They see the fire, the drama, the pushback, and think they understand the person behind it. But your independence works differently. It isn't about showy defiance or attention-grabbing rebellion. It's quiet, controlled, and internalized, yet powerful enough to make external pressures irrelevant. You don't need to shout or perform to assert your autonomy, because your mind and your choices are already operating on a plane they cannot influence. This subtlety confuses anyone trying to map you. They expect acts of rebellion, signs of resistance, or visible defiance that they can anticipate and counter. Instead, they encounter someone who doesn't bend, doesn't comply, and doesn't need permission to move. You resist influence not through confrontation, but through consistency and principle. The pressure they apply, whether social, emotional, or psychological, doesn't meet the usual resistance points. They're trying to push a lever that simply doesn't exist. Your independence creates a quiet tension around you. People sense it, even if they can't define it. It's disorienting because they cannot measure the boundaries you've established internally. Unlike those whose autonomy is performative, yours is absolute without needing recognition. This makes you uncatchable, unpressurable, and in many ways, untouchable. Observers who study, track, or try to control you find themselves second-guessing their assumptions at every step. The brilliance of this kind of independence is that it doesn't scream, yet it commands. It doesn't provoke openly, yet it dismantles expectation. It operates in silence, but its effects ripple outward. You move through life anchored in your own principles, unshaken by pressure, and untraceable in ways that leave others quietly unsettled, realizing that the person before them isn't someone they can manipulate, predict, or understand through conventional means. Your independence is a quiet storm, invisible yet undeniable, leaving everyone else to scramble for a foothold they will never find. Number 9. You change internally before people notice externally. Most people's transformations are loud, visible, and easily traced. They announce themselves through gestures, words, lifestyle changes, or social signals. Observers, manipulators, and trackers rely on these external cues to map progress, predict behavior, or adjust their strategies. They expect change to be something they can measure in real time. But with you, the transformation happens quietly, deep inside, long before anyone sees a hint of it in the outside world. Your evolution begins internally. Your mindset, your understanding, your priorities, your emotional structure, and only later do the external results follow. This timing makes you unpredictable because by the time people notice, you have already moved beyond the context they were trying to place you in. The impact of this is profound. Those trying to read you are constantly behind, reacting to what has already happened inside your mind rather than anticipating what is coming. They look for signs, shifts in tone, changes in habits, visible reactions. But by the time those signs appear, the person they were tracking has already completed a step they never saw coming. It's a quiet kind of power, no fanfare, no drama, but it leaves everyone else scrambling to catch up. They begin to realize that what they see is always a step behind, and the real work, the real change, happens where they cannot touch it, inside your mind. This internal first transformation also protects you. Because your evolution is grounded in private observation and internal processing, you avoid the vulnerabilities of performative growth. No one can predict your next move, influence your decisions, or undermine your progress because it hasn't left the secure space of your own awareness. Observers trying to map you may notice the results eventually, but they are always reacting to something already complete, making them ineffective and perpetually off balance. Your ability to change internally before showing it externally creates a kind of invisible authority. People are left unsure, trying to reconcile what they thought they knew with what reality now presents. By the time your transformation is visible, it is too late for anyone to interfere, and the quiet mastery of your internal evolution becomes an undeniable force that others can neither replicate nor explain. Number 10. Your motivations don't match what others assume should motivate you. Most people are predictable because their choices follow visible incentives. Status, money, approval, recognition, fear, or avoidance of loss. Observers, trackers, and manipulators rely on these predictable drives to anticipate behavior, plan influence, or exploit weaknesses. They study what people want, where they struggle, and what they will fight or compromise for. But you operate on an entirely different axis. Your motivations come from a place that cannot be easily measured or categorized. You move according to meaning, alignment, and principle rather than reward, comfort, or fear. Because of this, people who try to map or control you repeatedly miscalculate, misread, and ultimately fail to understand your next move. The unpredictability this creates is powerful. When others assume their usual levers, flattery, pressure, temptation, guilt, will work on you, they discover they are ineffective. The things that influence most people barely register for you. They might think they've discovered a weakness or a point of leverage, only to realize too late that it doesn't matter at all. Your choices are driven by internal logic and value systems, not external expectation or conventional human desire. This makes you a moving target in a world designed for predictability. Operating on motivations that others cannot decipher doesn't just protect you, it gives you quiet power. People around you notice the dissonance without fully understanding it. They see someone who doesn't chase the usual rewards, who doesn't panic over loss, who doesn't bow to social pressure in the ways they expect. That silent autonomy leaves observers unsettled, frustrated, and often intimidated, because they realize that what drives most humans doesn't drive you. Your mind becomes a place they cannot map. Your decisions can't be guessed, your priorities cannot be quantified, and your movement cannot be influenced by conventional tactics. In a world obsessed with leverage, control, and predictability, your unique internal compass makes you untouchable. People tracking you may see your actions, but they will never fully understand the reasoning behind them, and that gap between what they see and what truly motivates you is where your power silently thrives. Number 11. You remain calm in moments where most people reveal their hierarchy position. Most people's true selves are exposed under pressure. Stress, confrontation, or high-stakes situations tend to reveal their priorities, ambitions, and insecurities. Observers, manipulators, and even those tracking you in secret rely on these moments because they are predictable. They watch who flinches, who asserts dominance, who overcompensates, and who collapses under tension. These moments of reaction create a map of human behavior they can follow, manipulate, and anticipate. But you operate differently. In situations where most people instinctively reveal their place in a social or emotional hierarchy, you remain calm, controlled, and steady. Your composure doesn't just hide your position, it erases the hierarchy they are trying to impose. This calm creates a profound kind of confusion. People around you are expecting a performance, a reaction, or a signal. They anticipate that under pressure, someone will show vulnerability, desperation, or ambition. But when you remain measured and unshakable, you leave observers off balance. They can't read you the way they read others. They can't place you in the chain of influence, the pecking order, or the expected alignment. Their mental models fail because your behavior doesn't fit the usual script. By staying calm, you effectively remove yourself from the social competition they rely on to navigate and control. Your calmness isn't indifference, it's mastery. You are aware of the forces at play, you understand the stakes, and you operate from a center that is untouchable. While others scramble, argue, or overcompensate to assert position, you simply exist in steadiness. That steadiness becomes a subtle power, a presence that demands attention without demanding conflict. Observers realize, often too late, that their assumptions about control and influence no longer apply. Remaining calm in these moments is more than a strategy. It is a statement. It signals that your value, authority, and clarity are not dictated by external circumstances or social games. In a world where most people give themselves away under pressure, your quiet composure leaves you untouchable, untraceable, and impossible for observers to fully map, understand, or manipulate. Number 12. You listen longer than people expect before deciding what something means. Most people react instantly. They hear a statement, catch a gesture, or see an action, and they assign meaning right away. That instant judgment is what makes them predictable and easy to read. Observers, manipulators, and trackers rely on this reflexive processing because it allows them to anticipate behavior, apply influence, and manipulate outcomes. They expect that humans will interpret signals quickly, act on emotion, and reveal their conclusions in ways they can exploit. But you don't operate like that. You listen, you observe, and you absorb more than anyone expects before forming your interpretation. That extra time gives you a quiet advantage that is invisible, yet devastating. By holding back, by refusing to jump to conclusions, you become unpredictable. People who are trying to read you notice the delay and often misinterpret it as indecision, weakness, or confusion. They assume you are unsure, that there is a crack to exploit, or that a reaction is coming any second. Meanwhile, you are quietly assembling a full picture: context, nuance, hidden intentions, and emotional undercurrents before any decision emerges. When your interpretation finally surfaces, it lands with clarity and precision, often in ways that observers didn't anticipate. Their assumptions collapse because they mistook patience for hesitation, thought they could push your reaction, and failed to recognize that your silence is a form of control. This skill of listening longer also protects you. You avoid the mistakes others make by reacting too quickly, by trusting surface-level appearances, or by responding to manipulative cues. You move from knowledge, not impulse. People may think they understand the situation or believe they have leverage, but the truth is, by the time you reveal your understanding, you are already several steps ahead. The quiet power of listening longer than expected is subtle but undeniable. It reverses control, forces others into uncertainty, and makes your presence impossible to predict. Observers realize, often too late, that your mind doesn't operate on the same reactive timeline they rely on. Your patience is a weapon, your awareness is a shield, and your decisions are a force they cannot anticipate, measure, or explain. Number 13. Your boundaries appear ordinary until someone tries to cross them repeatedly. Most people's boundaries are visible from the start. You can tell who will fold under pressure, who will speak up, and who will let others overstep without consequence. That predictability is what manipulators and observers rely on. They test limits once or twice, and they quickly understand where control can be applied. But your boundaries operate differently. At first glance, they seem ordinary, even flexible. You don't announce them with a fanfare or draw sharp lines that scream, "Don't cross." You let people assume they understand you, that they know how far they can push. That assumption becomes their blind spot. The moment someone tests those limits repeatedly, the hidden strength of your boundaries reveals itself. People who misjudged your flexibility suddenly realize that what they thought was casual tolerance is actually disciplined control. They encounter a firmness they never anticipated, and the shift catches them off guard. They are left off balance because they believed your tolerance indicated weakness, when in reality it was a quiet test of their own behavior. Your boundaries are not arbitrary, they are deliberate, measured, and built to protect both your space and your mind from intrusion. This dynamic makes you difficult to manipulate. People tracking you in secret may believe they understand how to operate within your comfort zone, only to discover that repeated pressure exposes limits they didn't see coming. The delayed revelation of your boundaries forces them to reconsider every assumption they made about you, and that uncertainty is power. It flips the script. The people trying to probe, control, or predict your behavior are left reacting to rules they didn't know existed, playing catch-up in a game you've quietly mastered. Your hidden boundary system is more than a protective mechanism. It's a subtle assertion of control. By appearing ordinary at first and revealing your limits only when tested, you remain unreadable, unexploitable, and quietly commanding. Observers cannot map your space or anticipate your reaction, and that makes your presence in any situation quietly formidable, leaving those who try to measure you perpetually a step behind, constantly recalculating and painfully aware that they misjudged what you were capable of from the start. Number 14. Your mind operates on layers that even secret observers can't fully access. Most people's thinking is surface level and linear. Observers, trackers, and manipulators rely on this because it allows them to predict behavior, influence decisions, and anticipate reactions. They assume that if they watch closely enough, analyze carefully enough, and push the right buttons, they can understand what's going on inside someone's head. But your mind doesn't follow those simple, visible patterns. It moves in layers, with thoughts, calculations, and insights running simultaneously in ways they cannot see or measure. What they observe is only a fraction of the reality, a thin veneer over a complex network of reasoning, intuition, and foresight that operates silently beneath the surface. This layered thinking makes you profoundly unreadable. They may see a reaction, a choice, or a comment, and think they understand the process behind it. In reality, they are seeing only the tip of the iceberg. Every action you take is informed by deeper currents of thought that are invisible, untraceable, and unassailable. While they focus on patterns they can measure, your mind is already working several steps ahead, predicting outcomes, weighing possibilities, and navigating complexities that their observation methods cannot capture. They are left confused, frustrated, and increasingly aware that no amount of scrutiny will ever reveal the full picture. The beauty of this layered operation is its quiet power. You don't need to announce your intelligence, your strategy, or your awareness. You move through life informed, deliberate, and untouchable, and those who try to monitor you are perpetually behind. They may catch glimpses of insight or brilliance, but they can't explain how it comes together, and that lack of understanding is disarming. Operating on mental layers beyond comprehension creates an invisible advantage. People tracking you may record behaviors, catalog patterns, or attempt to influence outcomes, but their tools fail against the depth of your mind. Your thoughts are not a book to read. They are a labyrinth to navigate, and you hold the map. That complexity, subtle and silent, is the ultimate defense and the ultimate power, leaving observers endlessly baffled, quietly intimidated, and unable to ever fully grasp the force of your inner world. Every person who has tried to understand, predict, or control you has hit the same invisible wall, because your mind, your principles, and your presence refuse to be confined by ordinary expectations. From the way you think, to the way you choose, to the quiet, layered complexity of your decisions, you operate on a level that others can neither fully grasp nor anticipate. You are not reactive in the ways they assume, nor are you bound by the usual pressures, patterns, or levers that control most people. Every pause, every principle-driven choice, every subtle withdrawal or carefully measured reaction becomes a signal of strength they can't interpret, a demonstration of autonomy that leaves them guessing and often frustrated. The truth is, being unreadable and unexploitable isn't about hiding or creating illusions. It's about mastery of self, clarity of values, and consistency in action. It's about knowing when to act, when to observe, and when to let your inner layers do the work that others can only try and fail to decode. By moving with awareness, patience, and quiet power, you transform yourself into a force that is simultaneously unpredictable and undeniable. The people secretly observing you are left with glimpses, assumptions, and fragments of understanding, never the full picture, because you operate on a plane that transcends their models of human behavior. This is more than a mental advantage. It's freedom. Freedom from manipulation, from control, from the relentless pressure to conform. Your mind, your loyalty, your independence, and your subtle yet profound timing are weapons and shields at the same time. You exist in a space where no one can pin you down, and in that space your power is absolute. If this resonated with you and opened your eyes to the depth of your own unshakable strength, make sure to take action. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with insights that challenge ordinary thinking, like this video, if it gave you that powerful aha moment. Comment to share your perspective or experiences, and share it with someone who needs to understand what it truly means to operate beyond predictability. Stay aware, stay unstoppable, and keep moving on a level that no one else can map. Stay awakened, chosen ones.